I swear, if you'd told me that a random weekend trip would almost ruin my friendship and maybe change it forever, I wouldn't have gotten in the car. But that's exactly what happened. It started as a stupid, impulsive idea. Harold texted me at 2 in the morning on a Thursday. Let's get out of here this weekend. Anywhere. I can't breathe in this city anymore. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, feeling the exact same way. 23 years old, working a job I didn't care about, watching the same cracked ceiling every night. The message felt like an escape hatch. So I replied, pick a city. He sent back a pin location, 3 hours away. Some coastal town neither of us had been to. No plan. No hotel booked. Just vibes and a half-charged power bank. That was our first mistake. Harold and I have been friends since sophomore year of college. We met in a marketing class, both equally lost, both pretending to understand what the professor was saying. He had this calm, steady presence about him. Dark hair, always slightly messy. Soft brown eyes that somehow made you feel like you were the only person in the room when he looked at you. I didn't realize when exactly I started noticing him differently. Maybe it was the night we got drunk after finals and he fell asleep on my shoulder. Maybe it was the way he'd rest his hand on my back when we crossed busy streets. Maybe it was just time. But by the time this trip came around, I knew one thing for sure. I was in deep, and I was pretty sure he had no idea. We left Friday afternoon in my car. The sun was still high, traffic crawling out of the city. Harold had his feet on the dashboard like he owned the place. You ever feel like we're wasting our 20s? He asked out of nowhere. Constantly, I said. He laughed, but it wasn't really a joke. I don't want to wake up at 30 and realize I never did anything reckless. You texted me at 2 a.m. and convinced me to drive to a random city with no hotel. I reminded him. This is reckless. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Not reckless enough. Something about the way he said it made my stomach flip. I focused on the road. By the time we reached the coast, it was dark. The ocean air hit us the second we stepped out of the car, cold, sharp, alive. The town was louder than I expected. Music spilling from bars, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement. Okay, I said. First problem. We have nowhere to sleep. Harold pulled out his phone and frowned. Every decent hotel's booked. Of course they are. It was peak season. We hadn't thought that part through. We tried 3 places anyway. Walked into lobbies pretending we weren't desperate. Each time, polite smiles, no availability. By the 4th rejection, we were standing on the sidewalk, both slightly irritated, both pretending not to be stressed. This is fine, Harold said, running a hand through his hair. Worst case, we sleep in the car. I stared at him. In this weather? He grinned. We've done worse. That grin. That stupid, confident grin. It made it hard to stay annoyed. Let's at least grab a drink, he said. We'll figure it out. Second mistake. The bar we picked was crowded, loud, sticky floors, and cheap lighting. The kind of place where strangers get too close too fast. We squeezed in near the counter. Harold ordered shots immediately. Celebrating what? I asked. Being alive, he said, clinking his glass against mine. The alcohol hit fast. Maybe because I hadn't eaten much. Maybe because I was already on edge being alone with him in a different city. Everything felt amplified. The music, the lights, the way his knee brushed mine under the bar stool. At some point, he leaned in to hear me over the noise, his mouth close to my ear. You're different tonight, he said. How? Looser. Like you're not overthinking everything. If only he knew. You think I overthink? I asked. I know you do. He said it gently. Not teasing. Just observant. The conversation blurred after that. More drinks. More laughter. Some random group joining us for a while. I remember Harold's hand on my shoulder as he introduced me to someone. The way he didn't move it right away. I remember thinking, if something's going to happen, it'll happen tonight. And that thought scared the hell out of me. We stumbled out of the bar past midnight. The air was colder now. The streets still buzzing but slightly less chaotic. Okay, I said, trying to sound more sober than I felt. We need a plan. Harold was quieter now. The alcohol had softened him. There's a beach a few blocks down. And maybe we just sit. Think. I laughed. That's your solution? But I followed him anyway. The beach was darker than I expected. Only a few distant bonfires, waves crashing loud enough to swallow our thoughts. We kicked off our shoes and walked closer to the water. It felt unreal, like we weren't us anymore. Just 2 silhouettes in the dark. Harold sat first, pulling his knees up, staring at the horizon. I don't want to go back, he said suddenly. To the city? To pretending. My heart skipped. Pretending what? He didn't answer right away. The wind picked up, whipping his hair across his forehead. He looked conflicted, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. Do you ever feel like there's something you're supposed to say? He started slowly. But if you say it, everything changes? My chest tightened. Yeah, I said, barely above a whisper. He looked at me then, really looked at me. And for a second, I was sure he was going to say it. But instead, headlights flashed behind us. A voice shouted something from up near the boardwalk. And just like that, the moment cracked. That's when things actually started to spiral. And trust me, we had no idea how out of control it was about to get. The headlights weren't subtle. They cut across the sand like a spotlight, blinding and invasive. Harold squinted, lifting a hand to shield his eyes. Are they yelling at us? He muttered. I turned, trying to focus past the glare. 2 security guys, maybe beach patrol. One of them was already walking toward us, flashlight bouncing with each step. Beach closes at midnight, he shouted. You can't be down here. Harold let out a short laugh under his breath. Of course it does. I stood up, brushing sand off my jeans. We're leaving, I called back. The guy wasn't aggressive, just annoyed. But the moment, the almost confession, the charged silence, was gone, shattered by authority and fluorescent light. As we walked back toward the boardwalk, Harold's shoulder kept bumping into mine. Not accidentally. Not fully intentional either. Just close. Too close. Sorry, he said once. It's fine. But it wasn't just fine. It felt like everything was sitting on the edge of something we weren't brave enough to name. We reached my car and just stood there. The city lights flickered behind us. Somewhere in the distance, someone laughed too loud. A couple stumbled past holding hands. We could drive back tonight, I offered. 3 hours isn't that bad. Harold looked exhausted. And not just physically. I don't want to go home, he repeated. The way he said it this time didn't sound rebellious. It sounded scared. Then what do you want? I asked quietly. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath mixed with ocean air. I want to stop feeling like I'm constantly about to lose something, he said. My pulse hammered in my ears. Lose what? You. That word hit harder than it should have. What are you talking about? I asked, but my voice wasn't steady. He dragged a hand down his face, frustrated with himself. I don't know how to explain it without sounding insane. Try. Silence stretched between us. The tension wasn't playful anymore. It was raw. I feel like you're slipping away, he said finally. Like you're building this life that doesn't include me. I blinked. That's not what I expected. Harold, I started carefully. I'm not going anywhere. That's not what it feels like. He looked up at me then, and I saw something in his expression that made my chest ache. Jealousy. And something else. Something heavier. You've been distant, he added. Like you're holding something back. Because I was. Every damn day. I swallowed. Maybe I am. He searched my face. Why? Because I'm in love with you. The word sat right there. Burning. Ready. But fear is louder than honesty sometimes. Because I don't know where I stand with you, I said instead. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? I laughed nervously. You flirt. Then you act like nothing happened. You pull me close. Then you disappear for days. I never know if I'm imagining it. The second I said it, I realized I'd revealed too much. Harold went very still. Levi, he said slowly, what exactly do you think you're imagining? There it was. The cliff edge. One step forward and everything changes. I force myself not to look away. Sometimes it feels like you want something from me. Something more. The air between us shifted. He didn't deny it. He didn't laugh. Instead, he stepped even closer. I do, he admitted. My stomach dropped. You do what? He exhaled shakily. I want more. I just don't know how to ask for it without ruining everything. My brain short-circuited. Ruining what? This, he said. Us. We were inches apart now. The world felt very small. You think telling me would ruin us? I asked. He gave me a look that was half disbelief, half fear. You're my best friend. And if you don't feel the same. I do. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Everything froze. Harold stared at me like he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. What? I do. I repeated, my voice steadier now. Feel the same. His expression changed in real time. Shock. Relief. Something dangerously close to hope. Levi, he breathed. And then he kissed me. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't cinematic. It was clumsy and slightly off-center and tasted like tequila and salt air. And it felt like jumping off a cliff. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My hands hovered awkwardly before finally settling on his waist. He pulled me closer, fingers gripping the back of my jacket like he was afraid I'd disappear. It was everything I'd imagined. And also terrifying. Because once you cross that line, there's no going back. We broke apart when a car drove past too slowly. Reality rushed back in. We were in a random city. No hotel. Slightly drunk. Standing next to my car like idiots who just detonated their own friendship. Harold ran a hand through his hair again, pacing a few steps away. Okay, he muttered. Okay. Okay. I echoed. I did not plan for that. You think I did? He laughed nervously. Then he looked at me again. And the tension wasn't uncertainty anymore. It was hunger. Get in the car, he said quietly. My heart thudded. Why? Because if we stay standing here, I'm going to kiss you again. And I don't think we should do that in public. That was the third mistake. Because once we got in that car, things really did go out of control. The second the car doors shut, everything felt louder. My heartbeat. Our breathing. The faint ticking sound from the cooling engine. We just sat there. Harold in the passenger seat turned slightly toward me gripping the steering wheel like I was about to drive into battle. Neither of us moved. You're sober enough to drive, right? He asked quietly. Yeah. But I didn't start the car. Because that wasn't what he meant. He leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. I've wanted to do that for months. My throat went dry. Why didn't you? Because I didn't know if I'd ruin the only stable thing in my life. That hit. I turned toward him fully. You really think I'd disappear over that? I didn't know, he admitted. You're hard to read sometimes. That's rich, coming from you. He gave a faint smile. The tension between us wasn't explosive anymore. It was simmering. Thick. Charged. Levi, he said carefully. If we keep going tonight, we can't pretend it didn't happen tomorrow. I don't want to pretend. His eyes searched mine like he was looking for hesitation. He didn't find any. Slowly, he reached across the center console and took my hand. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. Just his fingers sliding into mine like they'd been trying to find that spot forever. You're shaking, he murmured. So are you. He let out a breathy laugh. Then he leaned in again. This kiss was slower. Intentional. No tequila rush. No impulsive collision. Just warmth and pressure and the realization that we were choosing this. I moved my hand to his jaw. He tilted his head slightly, deepening it. The world outside the car disappeared. But reality has a way of creeping back in. A truck drove past, headlights flashing through the windshield. We broke apart again, breathless. This is stupid, I muttered. Yeah, he agreed. Car. Public street. No place to stay. He rested his forehead briefly against mine. We need somewhere private. I swallowed. Unless you've suddenly become fearless, he added. I pulled back slightly. I'm not fearless. Good. He gave me a look that made my stomach flip again. Because I don't want this to be reckless, he said. I want it to mean something. That right there stopped me from spiraling. Because this wasn't just heat. It wasn't just tension exploding. It was 2 years of almosts. 2 years of stolen glances and hands lingering too long. 2 years of pretending. Let's find a place, I said. It took another 40 minutes. One overpriced motel near the edge of town. Flickering sign. Questionable carpet. Last available room. We didn't even hesitate. That probably says everything. The elevator ride up was quiet. Not awkward. Just heavy with anticipation. My brain kept trying to catch up to what was happening. Best friend. Same room. One bed. Harold's shoulder brushed mine as we walked down the hallway. This time, neither of us apologized. Inside the room, the door shut with a dull click. Silence. He dropped the key card on the small desk. I stood near the door like I'd forgotten how rooms worked. Well, he said softly. Well, I echoed. The space between us felt smaller than the car somehow. I need to know something, he added. What? Are you sure? No jokes. No flirting. Just steady eye contact. I've never been more sure of anything, I admitted. That was all he needed. He closed the distance slowly this time. Like we had all the time in the world. His hands settled on my waist first. Warm. Firm. Grounding. Mine slid up his chest, feeling his heartbeat under my palm. We kissed again. Deeper now. Hungrier, but still careful. Learning each other. Testing boundaries without crossing too fast. My back hit the wall gently. Harold pulled away just enough to look at me. If at any point you want to stop, I won't. He searched my face one more time. Then he kissed me again, and this time I felt it everywhere. Not just in my chest. Not just in my head. Everywhere. The room blurred into background noise. The tension that had been building for months finally had somewhere to go. We weren't reckless. We weren't drunk anymore. We were just two people who had been holding back for way too long. And when we finally let go, it wasn't chaos. It was relief. Later, when the adrenaline settled and the room was quiet again, Harold lay on his back staring at the ceiling. I was beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Everything just changed," he said softly. "Yeah. Are you freaking out?" "A little." He turned his head toward me. "Regret?" I didn't even hesitate. "None." His hand found mine under the thin motel blanket. "We drove to another city," he murmured, "with no plan. And somehow this is the thing that scares me most." "Why?" "Because this matters." I squeezed his fingers. "Good," I said. But neither of us realized yet. The real test wasn't what happened in that motel room. It was what would happen when we went back home. And trust me, that's where things actually started to fall apart. The drive back home was nothing like the drive there. Same highway, same car, completely different air between us. Harold had his arm resting on the center console, fingers occasionally brushing mine like he needed reassurance I was still there. Neither of us turned on music. Silence felt more honest. I kept replaying everything in my head. The beach, the confession, the motel room. It didn't feel like a mistake, but it also didn't feel simple anymore. "Say something," Harold finally murmured. "About what?" "About us." That word still felt new. I glanced at him. "What do you want me to say?" He stared out the window for a moment before answering. "That we're not going to pretend this was just a weekend thing." It wasn't. He turned toward me immediately. "So what is it?" There it was. The question. The one that would define everything. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "It's real." He studied my face like he was checking for cracks. "You're not just saying that because it's fresh," he said quietly. "I've wanted you for 2 years," I admitted. Fresh isn't the word. That made him exhale like he'd been holding his breath since Friday. But even as relief settled between us, something else crept in. Fear. Not of each other. Of what happens next. When we got back to the city, reality hit fast. Traffic. Notifications blowing up our phones. Missed calls from friends asking how the wild weekend was going. Harold laughed at one of the messages. If they only knew. I didn't laugh. Because now I was thinking about work. About mutual friends. About how complicated life gets when lines shift. He noticed my mood change instantly. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. Levi." I pulled into my apartment parking lot and killed the engine. "It's just, this is different here." "Different how?" "We don't get to stay in that bubble anymore." He frowned slightly. "You think I don't know that?" "That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" I looked at him fully now. "I mean this city is where we built our friendship. Where everyone knows us as us." "As what?" he pressed. "As best friends." The words felt heavier than they should have. He leaned back in his seat, jaw tightening. "So what? You're worried about what people will say?" "I'm worried about losing everything if this goes wrong." There. The ugly truth. He went quiet. Not defensive. Just quiet. "You think I'm going to hurt you?" he asked softly. "No." "Then what's the risk?" "That if we don't work, I lose you completely." That landed. Because that fear went both ways. He reached for my hand again, slower this time. "I'm not asking you to risk everything blindly," he said. "I'm asking you to trust that what happened wasn't random." "It wasn't," I said quickly. "Then stop talking like it's a ticking time bomb." The frustration in his voice wasn't anger. It was hurt. And I hated that I'd put it there. "I just need time to process," I admitted. "Time to process me?" "Time to process that my best friend is now more." He held my gaze. "Do you regret calling me that?" he asked. "Best friend?" "No." "More?" I didn't hesitate. "No." The tension in his shoulders eased. But it wasn't fully gone. Because even though we both wanted this, we weren't used to it. The first few days back felt surreal. We didn't tell anyone. Not because we were ashamed. Just because we weren't ready. Instead, we texted constantly. Short, loaded messages. "Thinking about you. Last night," keeps replaying. "Come over." When he came to my apartment that Wednesday, it wasn't chaotic or dramatic. It was softer, more intentional. He stood in my kitchen like he always had. But now when he looked at me, there was no pretending. We moved slower this time. Less urgency. More certainty. Afterward, we stayed tangled up on my couch, talking about everything we'd avoided for months. I was terrified you'd reject me, he admitted. I was terrified you'd change your mind. He smirked slightly. You really think I'd drive 3 hours and blow up our friendship just to change my mind? When you put it like that. He nudged me. But underneath the teasing, there was something deeper settling between us. Commitment. Unspoken, but real. The first crack didn't come from us. It came from outside. 2 weeks later, one of our friends saw us leaving my apartment together at 2 a.m. Not unusual. Except this time, Harold kissed my cheek before we separated. And someone noticed. By Friday, rumors were circulating. Nothing explicit. Just whispers. Are you two? Something going on? You've been spending a lot of time together. Harold brushed it off easily. I didn't. Because now it wasn't just about feelings. It was about identity, visibility, and the fact that once the truth is out, you don't get to control how people react. That's when the pressure started building. Not between us, around us. And pressure does one of two things. It either strengthens what's real or exposes what's fragile. We were about to find out which one we were. The rumor didn't explode. It simmered, which, honestly, was worse. People didn't confront us directly. They just watched a little longer, asked slightly pointed questions. Noticed the way Harold's hand rested at the small of my back when we walked into a bar. The way I leaned into him without thinking. One night, we were out with our usual group. Same table, same drinks, same laughter. Except this time, I was hyper-aware of everything. Harold's knee pressed against mine under the table. I didn't move it. Across from us, Matt raised an eyebrow. So, he said casually, swirling his drink. You two good? Harold didn't hesitate. Yeah. Matt smirked. Good, good. The table went quiet for half a second too long. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Harold glanced at me, not asking permission, just checking alignment. And then he did something that changed the trajectory of everything. He reached for my hand. Right there. In the open. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just simple and steady. Yeah, he said calmly. Good, good. You could feel the air shift. Matt blinked once, then leaned back. About time, he muttered. Someone else laughed nervously. And that was it. No yelling. No dramatic exits. Just adjustment. But even small adjustments come with weight. Later that night, when we were alone in my apartment, I was pacing. That was reckless, I said. Harold was sitting on the couch, watching me with mild confusion. Holding your hand. In front of everyone. You think they didn't already know? That's not the point. He stood up and walked toward me slowly. Then what is the point? I stopped pacing. The point is, once it's out, it's out. And what if people treat you differently? He studied me carefully. You mean treat you differently? That landed. Because he was right. I wasn't afraid for him. I was afraid for myself. I've never been public, I admitted quietly. He softened instantly. Levi, he said, stepping closer. We move at your speed. I don't want you to feel hidden. I don't. You don't. He shook his head. What we have isn't fragile. It doesn't need an audience to exist. That steadiness, that's what always grounded me about him. But pressure doesn't disappear just because someone reassures you. It builds in quieter ways. The first real fight happened 2 weeks later. Not about jealousy. Not about insecurity. About space. He'd started staying over more often. Leaving a toothbrush at my place. A hoodie on my chair. Little signs of permanence. And one night, after a long day at work, I came home overwhelmed. He was already there. Cooking. Music playing softly. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt suffocating. You didn't tell me you were coming over, I said sharper than I meant to. He froze slightly. I thought we said I could. Yeah, but what? I ran a hand through my hair. I just needed quiet. His expression shifted. Hurt creeping in. I can leave, he said. That's not what I meant. It sounds like it is. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Different from before. This is what I was scared of, I muttered. What, he asked. That we'd lose the easy part. He stepped back slightly, jaw tightening. So being with me isn't easy? That's not fair. I'm asking. I exhaled slowly. It's intense. He nodded once. Yeah, it is. No sarcasm. No defensiveness. Just truth. You went from best friend to everything. I continued. That's a shift. He looked at me carefully. Do you want to go back? The question hit harder than I expected. No, I said immediately. Then we learn how to do this. His voice wasn't angry. It was steady. That steadiness again. You think I don't feel the pressure too? He added quietly. I wake up every day knowing if I mess this up, I lose my best friend. That silenced me, because I'd been acting like I was the only one carrying the weight. He stepped closer again, slower this time. We didn't lose control that weekend, he said. We were honest. Honesty feels risky. It is. He reached up and cupped my face gently. But hiding was worse. And that's when it clicked. The trip hadn't sent things out of control. It forced control to shift. From fear to choice. That night, we didn't rush anything. We just sat on the couch, talked through boundaries, space, expectations. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was mature, which honestly scared me more than anything else. Because mature means real, and real means lasting. A month later, we went back to that coastal town. Not impulsively. Planned. Booked hotel. Clear heads. We stood on the same beach. No security lights this time. Just waves. Harold looked at me and smirked. Still feel like we lost control? I shook my head. No, I said. What do you feel? I stepped closer to him, the ocean wind cold against my face. Like we finally stopped pretending. He kissed me again. Not reckless. Not hidden. Just ours. And for the first time since that night, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Going back to that beach should have felt symbolic. Like closure. Like a look how far we've come moment. And in some ways, it was. But growth doesn't erase pressure. It just exposes new layers. About 2 months after that first trip, Harold got offered a job. Not in our city. 6 hours away. He told me on a Tuesday night. We were sitting on my kitchen floor, eating takeout straight from the containers because neither of us felt like using plates. I wasn't going to apply, he said casually. That tone. Too casual. What do you mean? I asked. I sent my resume at like 1 a.m. One of those why not moments. And they loved me. The air shifted. When do they want you? I asked carefully. In a month. A month. My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. That's soon. Yeah. Silence settled between us. This was the part no one prepares you for. Not the confession. Not the first kiss. Not the are we good. The part where real life forces you to define what this actually is. You're going to take it, I said. It wasn't a question. He watched me closely. I don't know. Yes, you do. He exhaled slowly. It's a huge opportunity. I know. But don't. I cut in gently. Don't what? Don't make me the reason you hesitate. His jaw tightened slightly. You're not a reason. You're part of the equation. And I don't want to be the part that costs you something. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I spent years pretending I didn't want you, he said quietly. I'm not about to pretend this job doesn't scare me because it might mean distance. Distance. That word felt heavier than anything we'd said before. We can do distance. I said quickly, maybe too quickly. Can we? Yes. But my voice betrayed me. Because long distance doesn't just test love. It tests patience, trust, security, all the fragile parts. The next few weeks felt different. Not bad, just tightened. Every moment carried the weight of limited time. We spent more nights together, more slow mornings, more honest conversations. But underneath it all was a clock ticking quietly. One night, about a week before he was supposed to decide, we were back on my couch. Tell me the truth, he said. About what? Are you scared I'll leave and it'll fade? I didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. He nodded once. I am too. That surprised me. You are. I've never done long distance, he admitted. And I've never cared like this. The vulnerability in his voice hit me harder than anything else. We survived pretending, I said softly. I think we can survive honesty. He smiled faintly at that. You always say things like that, he murmured. Like what? Like you're braver than you feel. I laughed quietly. You think I'm brave? I think you're terrified half the time. Thanks. But you choose anyway. That stuck with me. Because that's what this had always been. Not recklessness. Choice. 3 days before his deadline, we went for a walk. No dramatic speeches. No ultimatums. Just us. I'm taking it, he said finally. My chest squeezed. Okay. He stopped walking. That's it. I forced a small smile. I told you I wouldn't hold you back. He searched my face. Are you going to resent me? No. You sure? I stepped closer. If this is real, I said, it survives 6 hours. He studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled me into him, tighter than usual. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. You won't. But even as I said it, I knew something. This was the real test. Not the motel. Not the rumors. Not the first fight. Distance reveals cracks you didn't know were there. The night before he moved, we didn't talk much. We just existed in the same space. He lay beside me, staring at the ceiling like he had that first night in the motel. Everything changed because we drove to another city, he said quietly. Yeah. You ever regret going? I turned toward him. Not once. He nodded slowly. Me neither. Then, softer. But I think if we hadn't, I would have always wondered. I understood that. Regret is heavier than risk. The morning he left, we didn't make a scene. No dramatic airport goodbye. Just a long hug in my parking lot. He held my face like he was memorizing it. 6 hours isn't the end of the world, he said. No, I agreed. It's just space. And we've survived worse. He smirked slightly. Yeah, like pretending we didn't want each other. I smiled back. Then he got in his car, and I stood there until he disappeared around the corner. That first week apart felt strange. Not broken, just stretched. Calls at night. Text updates during the day. I miss you sent more often than either of us expected. But under it all was tension. Not because we doubted each other. Because we missed proximity. Touch. The ease of being in the same room. And that's when I realized something important. We hadn't lost control that weekend. We'd found it. We chose this. And now, we had to keep choosing it. Even from 6 hours away. The first crack didn't come from jealousy. It came from silence. And silence is worse. At first, the distance felt almost romantic. Late night calls. Drive safe texts. Photos of random things that reminded us of each other. He'd send me pictures of the skyline from his new apartment. I'd send him dumb selfies from my couch. We made it a routine. Sunday night video calls. Midweek, I miss you voice notes. Weekend visits when we could manage them. The first month, solid. The second, harder. Not because we fought, because we didn't. It started small. He'd call later than usual. I got caught up at work, he'd say. I believed him. Then one night, he didn't call at all. Just a text at 1:12 a.m. Passed out. Long day. Sorry. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I thought he was lying, but because something felt off. The next morning I asked, everything okay? Yeah. What? You seem distant. A pause. Then, you're overthinking. That phrase. The one he used to tease me about. It didn't feel teasing anymore. By the third month, visits were less frequent. Work deadlines. Exhaustion. Life. Normal reasons. But normal reasons don't stop doubt from creeping in. One Friday night, I saw a photo on Instagram. Not from him. From someone tagged at a bar in his new city. Harold in the background. Laughing. Close to someone I didn't recognize. A guy. My stomach dropped. I didn't text immediately. I waited. Which was worse. He called me that night, sounding slightly distracted. You sound weird, he said. Do I? Yeah. I hesitated. Then I said it. I saw the picture. Silence. What picture? The one at the bar. Another pause. Oh, that. I hated that word. Who's the guy? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Just someone from work. Just. He exhaled slowly. Levi. What? You're doing it again. Doing what? Spiraling. That stung. I'm not spiraling, I said. I'm asking. And I'm answering. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. And that scared me more than anything. We didn't fight. But the call ended early. And for the first time since that beach, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Distance doesn't just test trust. It magnifies insecurity. The next few days felt strained. Short replies. Less warmth. Like we were both waiting for the other to admit something. Finally, I called him instead of texting. Are you happy there? I asked. The question surprised even me. Yeah, he said. Are you happy with us? Longer silence this time. I'm trying, he said honestly. That honesty hurt. What does that mean? I asked quietly. It means I miss you, he said. But I also miss how easy things were before everything got complicated. There it was. Complicated. You mean before me? I asked. That's not fair, isn't it? His frustration broke through for the first time. You think I regret choosing you? I don't know what you regret. He went quiet. Then softer. I don't regret you. Then what? I regret that we didn't think about how hard this would be. I sat down slowly on my couch. So what are you saying? I'm saying I feel stretched thin. The same word I'd used months ago. Stretched. I don't want to lose you, he added quickly. But I don't know how to be fully here and fully there. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't cheating. It was exhaustion. And that's harder to fight. 2 weeks later, he canceled a visit. Work emergency. I told him it was fine. It wasn't fine. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just felt something shift. Not breaking, just bending. And bends become breaks if you don't fix them. One night, after another short call, I sat in my apartment and realized something terrifying. I was starting to resent the distance. Not him. The space. The waiting. The constant effort. Love shouldn't feel like maintenance. But long distance is maintenance. Constant. Deliberate. Exhausting. The real turning point came when he said, maybe we need to slow down. Slow down. After everything. After the beach. After the motel. After choosing each other. Slow down how? I asked carefully. Less pressure, he said. Less expectation. That sounds like stepping back. It sounds like breathing. Silence filled the line. For the first time, I didn't know what to say, because part of me understood him, and part of me was terrified he was already halfway gone. That weekend, I did something reckless. Not like the first trip. More dangerous. I got in my car, and I drove 6 hours. Unannounced. Not to catch him cheating. Not to fight. Just to look at him in person and see if what we had still felt real. Because sometimes you can't measure love through a screen. When I knocked on his apartment door, I didn't know which version of us would answer. And trust me, what happened next changed everything again. The drive felt longer than 6 hours. Not because of traffic, because of doubt. Every mile gave my brain more time to spiral. What if he's relieved to see me? What if he's annoyed? What if I'm already too late? By the time I pulled into his apartment complex, my hands were shaking. I almost turned around. Almost. But regret is heavier than risk. So I got out of the car and walked to his building. When I knocked, my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Footsteps. The door opened. Harold stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. For half a second, he just stared. Levi. Hi. Confusion. Then shock. Then something softer. What are you doing here? I didn't want to fight over the phone, I said honestly. And I didn't want to slow down without looking at you. Silence. He stepped aside immediately. Come in. His apartment smelled different from mine. New place. New life. It hit me that this was his world now. And I wasn't in it. Not physically. He closed the door and turned toward me. You drove 6 hours. Yeah. Are you insane? Probably. A small, almost disbelieving laugh escaped him. Then the tension came back. What's going on? He asked. I didn't pace. I didn't over-explain. I miss you, I said. But more than that, I don't recognize us lately. He leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me carefully. I said we should slow down because I'm overwhelmed, he said. Not because I want out. Then why does it feel like you're halfway gone? That landed. He looked away for a second before answering. Because I'm scared. Of what? That I can't give you what you deserve from 6 hours away. His voice wasn't defensive. It was tired and honest. I don't need perfect, I said. I need effort. I am trying. I know. Silence again. But this silence was different. It wasn't avoidance. It was both of us standing at a fork in the road. He stepped closer slowly. When you showed up just now, he said quietly, my first thought wasn't panic. What was it? Relief. My chest tightened. Relief that you're still choosing this. I swallowed. I never stopped. He ran a hand through his hair again. That nervous habit he had when things mattered. I thought if I pulled back a little, he admitted, it would make it easier if this didn't work. I blinked. You were protecting yourself. And you. That's not how it felt. I know. We stood inches apart now. 6 hours of distance condensed into a few feet of space. I don't want to slow down, I said finally. I want to adapt. How? I come here more. He frowned slightly. That's not fair to you. Why? Your job. Your life. I can freelance more, I said. I've been thinking about it anyway. His eyes sharpened. You'd move? I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm saying I don't want geography to decide this. He stared at me like I'd just said something irreversible. Levi, he said carefully, don't make life changes out of fear. I'm not. Then why now? Because the idea of losing you feels worse than rebuilding somewhere new. I didn't say it like that. I just said, because I know what it feels like to almost not say something. I'm not doing that again. He stepped forward and cupped my face, just like the morning he left. You're brave when it counts, he murmured. I'm terrified, I admitted. Good. Good. Means it matters. He kissed me. Not rushed. Not desperate. Grounded. The kind of kiss that feels like a decision. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't want to slow down, he said. I want to build correctly. Then let's do that. No disappearing. No pulling back to protect each other. No assuming. I nodded. Deal. He exhaled slowly, tension draining out of him. You know what's insane? He added. What? If we hadn't randomly driven to that beach, I'd still be pretending. I smiled faintly. Yeah. And now you're standing in my apartment 6 hours away because you refuse to lose me. When you put it like that, I sound dramatic. You are dramatic. Shut up. He laughed softly and pulled me into him. And in that moment, the distance didn't disappear, but it felt manageable. 6 months later, I didn't just visit. I moved. Not impulsively. Planned. Talked through. Terrifying and steady at the same time. New city. New apartment. Both of our names on the lease. Sometimes I still think about that first night. No hotel. Too much tequila. Beach patrol yelling at us. We thought everything had gone out of control. But the truth? That weekend didn't ruin anything. It exposed everything. It forced honesty. And honesty is messy, but it's real. If I've learned anything from loving Harold, it's this. You don't lose control when you fall for someone. You lose control when you hide it. And we stopped hiding. That's what changed everything.